Well, I'm continuing on with my start to finish inside of Camera Raw, basically going through a raw photo with no settings, anything applied to it right out of the camera, and to show you the power of what you can get done inside of Camera Raw. Now, let's take a look here, and let me just to recap if you didn't see the first video, or just to refresh your memory here. The first thing I did is I changed the camera profile to camera landscape. That gave me a much better starting place. Then I came in here and I cropped and straightened the photo a little bit because this was a little bit crooked up top. And then finally we went to the basic panel and we adjusted our white balance. Okay, and in fact, let's come back over here because there we go, landscape, much better. Okay, and don't forget, I have a snapshot over here that I created earlier called before, which means that I can always see my before image. All right, so next thing we want to do here is exposure. So if we brighten the photo, everything gets brighter, right? And if we darken the photo, everything gets darker. I kind of wanted to darken the waterfall a little bit here, but it starts to darken everything else in the photo. So I'm going to double click on this slider. I'm going to set it back to 0. We're going to leave our exposure pretty much the same where it is. Maybe make it a little bit brighter overall. I'm not going to worry about the waterfall at this point because I can cover that using another tool. And this kind of demonstrates the power that if you start with a well-exposed photo, a good subject, well-exposed photo, how much you can get done here inside of Camera Raw. Next thing here is let's go ahead and turn on our highlight clipping warning up at the top. Just click on that little triangle. And you can see we have a little bit of clipping. We could come in here with this recovery tool. We could recover those highlights. I don't stress over these things. I'm not really, if for that little of an area, it's not even really worth it. But if it's really bugging you, you can come in here and you can recover those highlights. That's what recovery does. Fill light, there's nothing of significance in the shadows that I want to bring out. I can increase fill light. It'll bring out some of the shadow area down here. I just don't think there's anything of interest down here, which is why I'd prefer to just leave it dark. And then blacks is going to just bring up that blacks, and it's going to do really nicely at giving us a good amount of contrast here. All right, so that's before. That's after. So things are looking pretty good. Skip brightness, contrast. I don't really use them. Brightness sometimes when I have a sky involved, but I don't have a sky here. Clarity. So clarity is good. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and clarity would really bring out the detail in some of this area on the left and right. The problem is it does some weird things to the waterfall, especially the edges. It makes it look like it has a glow. All right, so that's before, that's after. So not so good there. Again, we're going to be able to address this using another tool later on. And then Vibrance is usually where I'll finish up here in the basic panel. And by the way, almost, I'd say 80 to 90% of the work I do in Camera Raw is done inside of the basic panel. Okay, so just to give you an idea of the power of what we have just in this one panel. But the last thing I'll finish up here is Vibrance. And Vibrance is just a nice way for me to pop some color into some of the undersaturated areas where I don't have to necessarily pay attention to what colors I want to change. Where I could do that if I wanted to come over here to HSL, hue, saturation, luminance. I could come in over here and I could target a specific color, but honestly in this example here, Vibrance just does well at just adding some color saturation to the parts of the photo that need it. All right, so let's take a look just at where we are so far, because in the next video we're going to take a look at finishing this off. But let's go take a look at our snapshots, and I'm going to call this after basic, because this is after the basic panel. Okay, and let's click on, I'm going to zoom out for a second, and let's click on our before image. So that's where we started, and then this is where we are just after the basic panel. Okay, and we haven't even finished it off. We have a couple things that we can do in here to tone down the waterfall a little bit, bring a little bit more sharpness into the photo, but we're going to cover that in the next series of the video, where I'll talk about some of the detailed corrections that we can start to do in our raw files right inside of Camera Raw.